why writers should educate themselves all the way through their careers. And what are they using as those tools?
I love that you asked that question. So the interesting thing is, I have taught all over the world, and I have found that in countries like Israel, Australia, Toronto, and London, that the type of writers that attend story events and ongoing education are working writers, versus in the US, the story events that are like, the bigger story events that are massive are for usually, I would say, the highest percentage of attendees are writers across the US who had an idea and want to make it happen, versus working writers. And I definitely believe that that holds writers back from creating longevity in their careers. I believe a writer should always be educating. I always say about myself that I'm a teacher for a moment and a student for life. And I am constantly reading every book that comes out on story and emotion and business and anything that can make me move to a higher level spiritually, work-wise, on a personal level. Like, I am all about the idea that we have to constantly, every day I wake up and think about how can I be better than I was yesterday? And for the writer, it really is, how can I expand my knowledge of story through continuous learning, as well as my observance and absorption of life and being able to communicate that in story? How can I continuously do that in a way that will fuel my career?
Do you think it's Western culture and the emphasis on overconfidence a little bit? Whereas maybe other cultures, it's okay to be...
I do. Like, I sit there and I think, I look at these story events that have all the top story people in the business, many of who you've interviewed, and I think, why would you not take the opportunity to continuously learn? I've been in the business 25 years. Like, I have seen every side of the business, and I always think, why would you not take a sounding board? Many of these writers, when you look at Michael Haig and you look at Chris Vogler, and you have had these incredible careers, John Truby and, Eric Edson, and there's so much that they have to say that brings value to the story process, and that's important. So ongoing education, in my view, is the key to creating a writing career that will last.
So just to reiterate, so in the States, you've seen many, maybe what you call baby writers, I think you'd use that term, and it doesn't matter age, it's just in terms of experience.
Right.
But then outside of the States, Europe and beyond, these are working writers,
oh, yeah.
and they're willing to...
Yeah, I'll ask the question. I always ask the question at the beginning of an event. How many of you have sold a pilot? Or how many of you are currently on staff? And everywhere else, it is mind-blowing to see 2/3 of the room raise their hand, versus here, you maybe see 10 people raise their hand, and it's a very different thing. And I think, I don't know why that is. Like, I sit there, now I can say my personal events, because I've worked with so many working writers, I get writers of all levels show up at those events. But when I do these big story events where there's like 20 or 30 speakers, in my world, I'm like, are you kidding me? That's incredible. Like, I want to get it. I want to soak up. Another one of my favorite story people is Dara Marks. Like, I look at it and I think, I want to soak up like everything they've learned and how they see story and how it aligns with how I see story, because that makes me a better teacher. You know, that makes me like, and I always love seeing like how we coin things in different ways, and it comes from our worldviews and how we teach story. And I think what we're all trying to master is teaching story in a way that leads the writer to sell the story. That's what we all want.
In terms of questions, do you see a difference in the type of question and even the tone that you get in the US-based groups versus, I mean, is there, you know how there's always certain people in a class that want to sort of debate the teacher,
Yeah.
whereas those that have actually a healthy curiosity and they want to know the answer?
Yeah. Yeah. I would say, well, one thing I found it's interesting between the audiences, like I definitely think the US audience absolutely has a curiosity, and I think that people want to learn. I definitely think that in the US we're connected with the idea of the quick fix. So I have an idea, I want to sell it and make it work, and that's definitely a part of it. And whereas I think like the writer in Australia does not make the type of money that the writer in the US makes. Like many Australian writers end up coming here because they don't make the kind of money, but they get the foundation there, and then they come here. And I think that, you know, I think that there is a tone in the questions, definitely from different countries, based on the worldview of how the writer is seen in that country. I mean, we are very fortunate that the writer is seen in a very strong light in the TV world and the film world, even though the TV world, the writer has more power. So I think it causes writers from around the world to want to get their foundation in their own culture and succeed there and then come here. So I definitely think that I've noticed at a number of the events that I've done internationally that the writers who are, I mean, I remember in Australia that I met one writer who had like 4 shows, but was still wanting to come to the US and wanting to expand because they looked at the US as being the end all be all because of the pay and because of the way people see writers.
Do you think that film and television writing is open to all sort of class and education level, whereas with the literary world, especially in like, let's say the East Coast, it's more of a closed network?
Yeah, I definitely. I mean, the literary world, it's interesting. I have worked with several novelists, but not near the amount of novelists as I have with TV and feature writers, because that's my background. But I think I definitely know that story is story, and you're going to benefit and learn from anyone. So I definitely think there are more closed off communities and how they see, but I also think like there's a massive trend right now toward the screenwriter writing the book and then writing the screenplay. So I think that's opening up the idea, and I personally love that process because I love the idea of really deeply going into the internal story in the book and then showing that in visual and action in the adaptation into the screenplay.
So then it creates this whole new viewer, which is the one that read the book first, and they want to weigh it against the novel.
Yeah, and the writer has more power too when they write the book and then sell the film.
Right. I'm thinking of like Janet Fitch. She did White Oleander, which was a book I had been recommended, but I had never read it, and then I absolutely loved the movie, and now I'm almost afraid to read the book. Yeah. But it was just, to me, I'd been recommended.
And that also happens if, are you an internal person? The reason I'm not a screenwriter is because I'm an internal writer, and I know that about myself, you know?
Going back to self-awareness.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.